Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel and another review. Wow, 3 weeks in a row. It's an absolute
What?
miracle. This never happens.
It's a new record.
Doctor Who they just haven't been putting out the news recently, so we've not had to talk about it.
Thank you,
what a
Doctor
shame.
Who.
So instead, we are continuing with our episode reviews, which, as always, we've seen these before. These are like re-reviews where we'll go back after potentially not seeing them for quite a long time and giving them another go and seeing what we think, if our opinions have changed, if we have any big epiphanies and hashtag unpopular opinions,
Yes.
which we may do about this one. This is episode 9 or episode 8 if you're going by Wikipedia.
If you're correct.
Of series 7 of Doctor Who, Cold War.
God, I wish it were cold here.
I do. It's ironic that this is set in the North Pole and we feel like we're in the bloody Sahara. It's horrible.
I was watching it as well, thinking like, wow. Like when I watched this when it first aired, the Cold War was 30 years ago. Now it's 40 years ago.
Terrible, horrific. But yes, this episode sees the Doctor and Clara, Matt Smith and Jenna Coleman, stuck on a Soviet submarine with a ice warrior that has been rescued from the ice. And matey boy ice warrior Skaudak, he just wants to go home. And to do that, he'll either politely wait and leave him alone, or someone's going to electrocute him and he's going to be pissed. Which one do you think happens? Spoiler alert, it's not the one where he politely waits.
That would be quite an episode.
Yes.
Although I'd watch him just having a cup of tea with everyone for 40 minutes.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. I'd love to get a little bit of Ice Warrior lore. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
But anyway, basically it's a quote-unquote bottle episode where they're in this one location and they've got to survive until either they defeat Skaudak or he leaves. What did you think of this episode?
I liked it very much. I think it's your bog standard Doctor Who, really. I think it kind of went quite a bit experimental with like the music theme being prevalent last week and the week before. It was like a kind of a different modern day kind of thing, very issue based with like the Wi-Fi and stuff, certainly at the time, even though it's still relevant now. So I think like you've had enough of your experimentation. Let's just do a bog standard Doctor Who story for a bit. Obviously not necessarily bog standard because it is the return of a classic villain for the first time in the new series. But yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Monster of the Week.
Monster of the Week. Base Under Siege. Quite literally, in all sense of the word, classic Doctor Who. And yeah, I very much enjoyed it. Probably because it wasn't a 4-parter like classic Doctor Who. Because can you imagine? But I really enjoyed everything about like the setting and stuff and the time periods, bringing the Ice Warriors back after so many years, 39 years I think it was, which is a long ass time to be sleeping. Well, no, not as long as 5,000 years. So sorry, quite insensitive of me, really. But yeah, I really enjoyed that. I think I got a lot of joy being like, I recognize like everyone in this cast, and I didn't even realize. Like even the guy Skaudak kills at the start is Prince Charles from The Crown, and he's in.
Well, there you go.
He's one of the two guys in that film with Zendaya. That's coming out. That tennis film. He's one of the two guys. I'm like, it's you. Before you were famous, hence why you were in it for 2 minutes at the start. And you play the biggest idiot in the world.
There's no
one impatient boy.
God.
So that was fun. And yeah, it was classic Doctor Who. I had fun with it. Doesn't set the world on fire, thankfully not, because they're in a submarine. But it's definitely not down at the bottom of the ocean with some bad episodes. So yeah, it didn't implode. I would say I think it held together quite nicely, this submarine. And I had a jolly good time with it.
Yep, I think that's fair enough. I really enjoyed it. I do think this one's quite underrated overall, because I really don't hear a lot of people talking about it. So I think it does fly under the radar for a lot of people.
Considering it's like the return of a classic monster as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Under the radar. Like Skaudak and his people for most of the episode.
Oh, yeah, like there's that. There's the fact that it does have some sort of big name guest actors in it. And it's a pretty solid episode in terms of sort of what it is. I think it's the best one so far of series 7B.
Interesting. Okay.
At least, I mean, we've only had 3 episodes of Series 7B, but I think it's the best one so far.
Okay.
And we'll come on to why now, because we do our positives and then we do some negatives and we try
Oh my God,
three
you're right.
each. I definitely went first last week, so it's your turn to go first this week. What's your first positive?
I've put mine a lot of slash all in one because I'm kind of cheating. But to summarize, I would say Skaudak or the Ice Warrior. The return of the Ice Warriors, the redesign of the Ice Warriors, the characterization of said Ice Warrior, the performance of said Ice Warrior, all that jazz. I really enjoyed seeing kind of an Ice Warrior again. I've watched the John Pertwee Ice Warrior stories. I haven't seen the original ones with Pat Troughton, mainly because they barely exist. That's kind of the main reason. And it's a fantastic redesign. They didn't change too much, as we will get into the fun facts as to why they changed and didn't change some things. But I think it looks great. I always think of the Doctor Who figurine collection, Ice Warrior, which is always one of my favorites. I just think it looks so cool.
I've got him somewhere, but I don't know where he is. But I do have him somewhere.
Where are you?
He's a big chunky boy as well.
He's a chunky boy, and he was one of the very first ones as well. So you have that nostalgia, I guess, for when I could still afford.
When we could all still afford these collections.
F in the chat for Eagle Moss as well.
Yeah.
No one's getting them anymore, so that's what matters.
No,
anyway, just the design of the costume thing looks great. I think it's such a cool redesign. They didn't change too much, which I think is kind of a success in this case, like the Zygons later on. I think Nick Briggs, of course, it's Nick Briggs doing the voice of the monster, because he always is. And I really like how they kind of changed that out from the classic series as well. And they did have like named Ice Warriors with personalities and stuff in previous stories. So I like that they kind of continued with that, but really add to the lore in regards to exactly Skaudak's place in, I guess, Ice Warrior mythos and the idea of like leaving your armor. And they've done something really, new and interesting with the Ice Warriors by having one leave its armor in this one. And that just kind of ramps up the tension even more, I guess, because you can't hear it coming as you otherwise might have expected to. So I kind of like that twist, like a third of the way through the episode, where like, okay, it's a very different kind of Ice Warrior story than people might have been expecting, but a good one. So I enjoyed that. And Skaudak's characterization, it's not just like, I'm evil, I'm going to destroy this sub and start this war, blah, 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 blah. We kind of, again, it's an addition to the Ice Warrior lore, like this code of honor that they have, this idea of mercy. And he does kind of go by that in the end. And, he could have easily just blown them up after he went home, but he chose not to. So I like that there is like a good bit of depth to him. And he's not just like, I'm an alien, I'm evil. So that's nice. And I also thought this kind of, I guess, ties into just how they're presented in general, I guess, is my positive. But I thought, in particular, the Ice Warrior was very well directed in this episode. The shots of him just like right at the start when they're like shooting at him and he's like approaching downwards, they normally keep him quite close to the camera, which I like. And in particular, this is the fun of, like, I guess, rewatching episodes and stuff. When Clara's talking to the suit, I think you can get away with thinking that it's just him in there when you first watch it, but it's so obvious he's not in there when you rewatch it again. I do like when there are moments like that in any TV show or film, when you kind of when you know where it's going, like, oh god, how did I miss that the first time? So I think that was really cool as well, and I think that adds to kind of the success of the return of the Ice Warriors with that. It also helps that Mark Gatiss is just a huge Ice Warrior fan, so getting him to write it was kind of a good idea, and he does so again in season 10. So it must have been somewhat well received to get another Ice Warrior episode, so that's nice. And yeah, nice. I really enjoyed Nice Warrior. Am I right? I was trying to make a Skaudak pun, but I can't think of anything. Maybe in time. Schooldak. There we go. No, he's cool because he's an Ice Warrior, so he's cool that he's Schooldak. Cut that out. But yeah, I really enjoyed the return of the Ice Warriors. I think he looks awesome. His characterization was, brilliantly done as well. He's very well written. Spencer Wilding did a good job kind of bringing him to life physically. Nick Briggs is the voice, and Douglas McKinnon's direction of him. I thought it all came together very nicely, and a very good return for the Ice Warrior. And it's kind of similar vein, I guess, to when the Daleks first came back. It was just a singular Dalek in an episode. I like that they treat them the same way. They have just one here, and then there's a big group of them in their next appearance. So I think that's a good format for bringing back a monster like this. Obviously, you wouldn't just do like a one Cyberman as like its first story back,
or one Auton. It wouldn't really work.
No, that would be a very slow invasion. That'd be a very easy defeat. You wouldn't need the anti-plastic for that necessarily.
No.
Jackie could just kick that to death, I think, if there's just one of them.
Yeah, probably.
So yeah, I like that approach for the Ice Warriors. I think it works quite well, and obviously sets up their return in future. Especially because I was reading up on the fact that the Ice Warriors were supposed to be in the 20th anniversary, and they got cut. So it's supposed to be in the Five Doctors that got cut out.
Oh, dear.
Then they planned for them to return the season after the show got cancelled.
Amazing.
So yeah, it was nice to see them finally get a return when they did try it and unfortunately failed a couple of times. So I think it was a success, and I really enjoy Skaldek.
Yep, I think that's fair enough. The quote-unquote Ice Warrior is my first positive as well. I think this was my first sort of experience with the Ice Warriors. I don't think I'd seen anything before.
Never forget your first time.
No, clearly not. And I don't think I'd seen any of their appearances in earlier Classic Who yet anyway. I just might be misremembering, but I don't think I've seen any more. But yeah, I really like this one. I know there's probably some uproar at the time when he gets out of his suit because blah blah blah. But I think overall that works pretty well. I think sometimes I get the impression that they were like, oh, we can't afford to make a whole body or CGI a whole body, so we need to work around this. Yeah,
shave down some Slitheen hands quickly.
Yes, exactly. But I think that plays into it. Sort of one of my additional ones is to sort of some of the practical stuff, like those practical hands. They just look so spindly and gross. I think they look really good. And the whole design of it's great. Even like the weird face as well when it's a CGI. I think that still holds up pretty well. Considering we're 10 years on from when this came out, it's held up very well. And yeah, I like the character. I like the whole thing of he doesn't really want to kill anyone, but they've sort of attacked him and he's provoked into it. He's like, I'm gonna have to do it now because you've attacked me, so I kind of have to do it. Yeah. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate the whole, if I'm gonna have to, if my race is dead and no one's coming to get you, I might as well take you all out with me, seeing as though you've attacked me. And yeah, I really like it.
My night completely.
Yeah, I'm going to destroy your planet and leave. Yeah, and I just really like it. I think there's not too much more I can really add to what you said, but yeah, I think it's great, and I want to see more of them. And it's criminal that we already have to wait 2-3 seasons before they return again, and they are yet to return after that as well. But I guess you could argue that they're too similar to other monsters. Maybe they're too similar to Cybermen, too similar to Sontarans.
They're very like Silurian Sea Devil kind of things, aren't they? Really?
Yeah, it's all that kind of thing where it can just be a faceless army, and they're not always the most exciting villains to put in. And that's why when it's just one of them, like it is here, it works much better. And maybe there's something for them. They should have done that with the Sea Devils in when they returned, and maybe that's something they should have done with the Silurians when they returned. Sort of having a one type thing. But I think this works very well, and it just works. I think, and it's great.
Yeah. I don't mean to brag, but when I was young and I planned when I became showrunner of Doctor Who, I did have an episode called Blood of the Sea Devils, and it was just one sea devil in a lighthouse. So that's how you do it.
You weren't too far then. You weren't too far off. You were pretty close.
I'm sad I didn't think of pirates, I'll admit.
Put that lighthouse on the side, and it's a boat. So
yeah, that's how that works.
Yeah. So your second positive.
My second positive is Professor Grisenko, aka David Warner, the late David Warner.
Interesting.
I mean, I did like a few of the kind of supporting characters, but he was far and away my favorite. David Warner was just there for vibes, and he was just having a good time. And I don't know, I think the fact that he's Russian, and this is like, I like that they don't just lean to the stereotypes. It probably helps when they're just casting British people as Russians because of the TARDIS translation matrix. But I'm glad, especially in like a submarine set story during the Cold War, you'd expect all like the classic stereotypical
everyone to be very
Russian
serious.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hunt for Red October kind of vibes. And I'm glad they kind of break away against that, and they do have, you know, quite realistically, I think someone who would want to, you know, keep things light and breezy and just having a good time, and you know, he's keen to learn new things and thinks a mammoth is that small. Bless him. So yeah, just listening to his Ultravox, obsessed. He's just a stan, really. Wondering if they're gonna split up and everything. That's great. I loved his relationship with Clara in particular. I thought they were really sweet. I'm glad that Clara kind of had someone to kind of, you know, I guess relate to or bounce off a bit, who properly understood. Because you know, the next episode, Hyde kind of deals with their very different reactions between the Doctor and Clara to death. Because when he's going, he's just watching the universe dies, and then when he's investigating the ghost in the next one, she's like, "What the hell are you doing?" And she has quite the reaction to seeing a dead body the first time in this one, and the Doctor's like, "Well, it's a Tuesday for me." So I like that she does have someone she can kind of talk that through, and I kind of like that setup for the next one, and then butting heads against that. So yeah, I just think he was very wholesome. I enjoyed his presence, and I guess in quite a tense episode, and you know, classic Base Under Siege claustrophobic kind of deal. I like that we had a more. I mean, the Doctor does have his funny moments, like his Barbie and everything like that. But I did like that we had kind of a constant bit of levity through a character like that. I did really come to care about him, and I forgot if he died or not. So when Scapadak grabbed him,
yeah,
like,
I forgot that as well. So, I was like, does he die?
I did like not really remembering that. So that was kind of fun as well. So that showed my investment in him. I just thought he was a fun little side character, and yeah, he was fun. I enjoyed him.
Fair enough. I have some opinions on him, but we'll unfortunately have to wait until later.
Oh dear.
For my opinions.
Oh no.
But my next positive
Speaking of the dead, everyone.
Yeah, I know. Does tie into your one, and it is the supporting cast overall. I think, including David Warner. I think he, in the role he has, he is good in that role. Whether or not I agree the role should be there is a different point. But I think he's good in that. But I think that it's, for me, it's Liam Cunningham and Toby Menzies.
Tobias Menzies, no Menzies.
Tobias and Liam.
The Game of Thrones people.
Yes, the two from Game of Thrones, funnily enough. I think they're really good in this. It sounds strange, but it shows that they're like professional actors, like stoic actors.
I think Liam Cunningham is in my bonus positives. He has such amazing presence. I found his character a bit one note and flat, so I didn't like I love him. But yeah, he's so good on screen. That character could have been so boring, I think, if it was anyone else.
Yeah, and I liked that they sort of had this sort of inner fight between the two of them, where Tobias was clearly not happy with the direction that this submarine was going, especially right at the start with doing the drill again, and even when it came to the Ice Warrior itself. So what a shame that he dies. Guess one of them was correct. But yeah, I just really like them. I think they were great. I think the writing, and we'll come on to that, really helps with this one. They deliver it really well. I think Liam Cunningham's scene with Matt Smith, sort of after it breaks free, I think, or is it just before? Just before it breaks free, I think is really good, where they're sort of having the standoff and explaining to each other what's going on.
Yeah, it's a good pairing, those two.
Yeah, it's really good, and it is very reminiscent of Matey Boy in Angels, the Angels two-parter.
Oh yeah, Father Octavian.
Yeah, it's Ian Glenn, that's it. It's very similar
Game
to
of Thrones
that
people.
One,
just get
again, Game of Thrones. Yeah, and Matt Smith, funny enough, will go on to star in a Game of Thrones spin-off.
We will talk about that in Fun Facts.
So it does kind of, I don't know whether it's that, but also Ian Glenn has that like stoic screen presence anyway.
Well, remember when Octavian dies in Flesh and Stone, that's one of my favorite Doctor Who scenes ever now. Like revisiting that, so definitely same vibes.
They know how to cast them at HBO, and yeah, I think that just most supporting casting was great. Even sort of the one-off sort of couple of line characters, Matey Boy from McMafia that gets killed,
James Norton,
taken up. He's great. Prince King Charles, I guess now Prince Charles at the start where he gets got. Yeah, I think they're all great. I think it's cast really well. And yeah, it does help that they're all British actors because of the TARDIS translation matrix. I think it's always convenient when that happens, and that also leans into the whole explaining the translation thing, which I think is a great scene. That whole scene is great, and yeah, I'll play on to my third one in a bit. But yeah, the supporting cast overall pretty good, and you can include Nicholas Briggs in that as well, voicing Skaldak. Because I didn't even realize it was him until I just looked at IMDb and was like, oh yeah, it is Nicholas Briggs.
Yeah. If it's an alien voice, it's Nicholas Briggs.
Yeah, I know.
He goes to Jadoon and all sorts, that man. Imagine having that range for your voice.
I know. I don't know how many filters it goes through. Obviously, the Dalek one has a filter that he goes through. So
he speaks into a mic, doesn't he?
But yeah, he does like everything else.
I remember the behind the scenes of him doing Doomsday is so funny because he just like.
Yeah.
I wonder if he ever mixed up the mics and did the Dark Line and the Cyberman one.
Almost definitely. I'd do it. Just swap them around. But yeah, I think the supporting cast are great. And I think this makes a few episodes in a row now where the supporting cast have been pretty good. I mean, you can't really tell there's much supporting cast last week, but the week before and the Snowmen, all pretty solid. And that goes on the same theme as Series 7A as well. You know, that also had
kind of the small scale stories. I think does just allow the cast to shine more, doesn't it? The guest cast.
I think we'll probably have that as well next week as well with Hyde, and there only been 3 other guest actors in that.
Yeah, and then unfortunately it's James Tennant at the time.
And then maybe
we can't have them all.
We'll drop them off at that point.
Then Crimson Horror is good, and the Nightmare Silver supporting cast are alright. Name the Doctor is just the same as Crimson Horror, basically.
Yeah, that's true. And Crimson Horror is basically just the Snowmen, so it's fine.
I just remembered Harris writes twice for 7B because he writes Crimson Horror as well. I forgot about
that. Of course he does. They were running out of writers at that point. They're like, please somebody.
Yeah, who writes in like every single series.
Yeah.
If he doesn't write in a series, he's appeared in it, which I find very funny.
Yes, yeah. Maybe that was in his contract. Maybe he had like a 10-year deal or something.
They sat down for series 3. They're like, sorry, Mark, there's no room for you this year. But we've got an old man who'd love you to play.
Yeah.
Would you like to play a Scorpion mutant man?
Oh,
sign me up.
And he was like, yes, okay, because there's no way he'd agreed for that if it was just if it was just a one-off deal. He would have. There's no way they had dirt on him to get him on that one. Oh, your third and final main positive, if you will.
My third and final main positive. I think I mentioned it briefly already, but the submarine setting. Mark Gatiss does talk about it when he kind of came up with the idea of the episode. It's like, why has Doctor Who never had a story set in a submarine before? It seems perfect. And I agree. I do like the claustrophobic nature of it. The exterior shots of it are all really cool and atmospheric as well. Very timely watch for us as we're recording this, given recent events with a Titanic submarine.
Yes.
Whenever you're watching this, that's when
if anything, it's very good that we did do some news episodes, because this would have been a very awkward episode to record.
This would have been like it's set in the sea. Yes, and we had that. The threat of nukes with Oppenheimer coming out. The Doctor had a Barbie with Barbie coming out.
I thought that.
It's such a 2023 episode, considering it aired in 2013.
I would have guessed 10 years ago it'd still be relevant, huh? And Russia are bad guys again. So,
Russia are bad guys. Of course. How could I forget? So, history is cyclical. Stories are cyclical. Stories do reflect real life a lot of the time. I think it's such a cool kind of base under siege setting, and they go on to use it. I think siege, yes, well done. And obviously, I think personally, it goes on to be used again with great success and like an underwater setting in Under the Lake Before the Flood. The Vashta Nerada adventure game is also set in like an underwater base, and that's very scary as well. Not just because it's the Vashta Nerada, but because under the sea is terrifying. So I think it's just something that works so well with Doctor Who. It just makes it inherently scarier, and even more so when Skaldak gets out of his armor and it becomes even more tense. And where is he? Where are you? I really like the setting. I think it's a very cool idea. It is one where how have they not done this before? It's literally it's screaming like a low budget episode, because you don't need that many sets, and yet they still hadn't done it until now.
You need only 2 corridors. That's all you need.
Exactly. It's amazing. And there's only one monster you need to make. It's great.
Exactly.
So I love the setting of the episode. I think it works very, very well. Very atmospheric. Just all these little elements, I think, just come together so nicely, and yeah, very good.
Yep, I think that's fair enough. Yeah, it is, and they've not gone back to it since. I mean, they've had underwater base, but they've not had like the submarine sort of very small and claustrophobic sort of thing again. But then again, if they did it again, people would probably just complain that they're just repeating it.
already.
Never mind.
I want Series 14 to be set entirely in a submarine.
Just in a submarine.
All 8 episodes.
And there's nothing going on. There's actually no villains. They're just stuck there.
It's revealed to be a TARDIS, and so they can just do whatever they want inside it, really.
Exactly. My final positive is the writing. I know, right? I quite enjoyed the way this is written. I think it really sort of specifically hit me when it was the Doctor and Zhukov, Liam Cunningham's character.
Davos.
Davos and God, what's his name in House of Dragon? Matt Smith.
Damon.
Davos and Damon, when they're having their little chat, at that point I was like, this is really good writing. I really like the back and forth here. I like the reveal of the TARDIS translation, sort of the side conversation they're kind of having, like, trying to do that. I like the bit at the end just where he's like trying to explain the HADs, the way the TARDIS disappeared and all that. I think it's written very well, and it's written sort of fast paced. And at the same time, there's also not too much dialogue.
Yeah, the episode's 41 minutes long, so it's like the shortest one in a long time. So
yeah, and I'm glad because it doesn't feel like there's too much padding in there.
I was glad because we had to go to a party the night this aired, and I was scared I wasn't going to get to watch the episode until we got back. But luckily, it flew by, so we just about managed to go after it. I was very pleased.
Amazing. But yeah, I think it was really good. And fair play to Mark Gatiss. Most of his episodes tend to be written pretty well. I think A Sign of the Daleks, not A Sign of the Daleks. Is it Victory of the Daleks?
Victory of the Daleks, yeah.
That's it.
He's written pretty well. Dead as well, which I love that episode.
Quite Dead is
it is Lantern. Well.
Yeah, let's not talk about that one.
Can't win them all. Can't win them all.
No. I mean, hey, say what you want about Idiot Lantern, but most of the script seems okay from what I can remember.
Yeah,
but,
apart from
everything else.
The dad.
Yes,
he's your dad. You should stay with him, even though he abuses you. Apart from that, it's fine. Actually, no,
that one.
The Wire is kind of iconic, really, isn't it?
Yes, she does slay Queen. So it's fine.
Yes, Queen.
But yeah, I really like how it's written, how the dialogue scenes were done, and then that sort of ties in with the performance of the cast anyway. Because you can write whatever you want, but if the cast doesn't pull it off, then it will fall flat either way. But it's great. And a good script will be the perfect basis for a Target novelization. So let's get on that, shall we?
Where Steppersham is revealed to be a serial killer.
Yes, he probably is. Let's face it. One of them will be. The professor is. That's why
he's actually. I think the professor would probably make more sense, wouldn't it?
Yeah. But yeah,
Scanlan didn't actually kill anyone in the episode. It was just him.
It was just him. Oh no, he's
God, he's
been taken apart. Oh no. Oh, he's dissected him. Whoopsie.
Oh dear.
Oh, never mind.
Just takes off his beanie and it's just like his hair's covered in blood.
Yeah. Have you got any other positives? Any sort of minor additional ones you want to mention?
Let's see. I put Liam Cunningham because he just has great presence. Davos is one of my favorites in Game of Thrones, so it's always fun to see him in things. And I think he did bring a nice kind of edge to the character that otherwise could have been quite boring. Even though I did like that he just completely on board with the Doctor straight away. I always like him in characters like that because we don't need to waste time. I'm glad it was him and Steppersham, not just Steppersham as that kind of character. So that's nice. Another good writing choice. And then I also liked the kind of character development Clara had in this episode. Surprising 0 people. Her reaction to like seeing a dead body for the first time and how that kind of really shook her up. I was doing fine. I did well as well as I could have done against the Ice Warrior. it wasn't my fault that kind of went wrong. And then just being caught like, oh damn, this is actually like we're doing some dangerous shit here. I did like. Yeah, I like when kind of companions do have that moment, like an End of the World where Rose sees all the Aidens, just like, I need to leave. So I do like when, just a bit of realism, I guess, in terms of how people respond, and just shows that they are human and not kind of crazy. And then also her bit later on, kind of very much seeking the doctor's approval. She's like, "Did I do well?" You know, and he's like, "It's not a test, Clara," but she's like, "Oh, but did I pass it?" You know, I think that kind of elements of that personality of wanting to, you know, please him and impress him and put herself in danger to do so, you know, that certainly bleeds into her character in later seasons. So I kind of like seeing some of the origins of that in this one. So that's just kind of fun retroactively to see, like, oh wow, that was in her quite early on. That's a weird sentence. That's a weird way of phrasing that.
It was in her character early on.
In her character. Yeah, her characterization. So again, good writing from Mark there. So I like that as well.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair. You do see sort of the start of, oh yeah, I could sort of take charge of these situations and I could do this. And then there's sort of the humbling, I guess, that happens with we see the dead person, which I think is she probably, with traveling the Doctor with so long, that becomes
it was the Mr. Incredible meme, wasn't it?
Yeah, basically. But you know, you then see that happens now, but then the longer she travels, the more immune she becomes to those kind of things, similar to the Doctor. And then that's sort of where things then start to go wrong, and then ultimately lead to her demise. Unfortunately. But yeah, so my additional ones. The Ice Warrior ship that appears at the end, I think looks really cool.
Yeah. I've forgotten I've seen it. I forgot.
Yeah, considering it's in like bright daylight and it's CGI, it still holds up pretty well. So that's a positive, because sometimes we see some spaceships and you're like, "Ooh, that's not done very well." Especially when they try and hide a lot of Skaldak in like shadow when it's a CGI face, like early on in the episode, you're thinking, "Oh, the CGI might not be that great." But then you see the ship and you see his face later on, and you're like, "Oh, it's pretty good." So
yeah,
fair play. Also, we mentioned it earlier, I do like the twist with the suit, where like, oh shit, he's not there. Whoopsie daisy. Yeah, and the practical weird spindly hands as well. They just look gross, and they're all like, when they're caressing Tobias's face and head, and I'm like, no thank you.
Yeah, I applaud him being able to pull off that scene where it's just two rubber hands,
just like some guy up there going, ooh, yeah,
can I tickle you? Ooh, can I get you?
Yeah, basically. So unfortunately we've had our fun with this episode, but we must now talk
now it's time to see the dead body.
Yes, now we must be negative, unfortunately. Although admittedly I struggled for my negatives, so
yeah, mine are kind of like, a lot of mine are like, I can live with them, but I needed to come up with something.
Yeah, fair enough. So what is your first you can live with it, but you need to come up with something?
The Hads.
Okay, yeah.
It's a nice reference to the classic series. I like that. You know, 50th anniversary year, sure, put some references in there. You've got a nice area back. You might as well do more classic references. But it is very convenient, especially when you could just have that bit of the sub flood or something, or like Skaldak is just guarding it. Doctor, family of blood vibes. You know, something like that, or I don't know. He puts his suit in. I don't know. Maybe if there was maybe a bit more of a set or a scene in the TARDIS at the start where we see him like setting up, like, let's give this a run, and like, now let's go to Vegas. Nothing can possibly go wrong, and obviously everything goes wrong. But it really does come out of the blue. I don't know why they felt the need to wait the entire episode to then just explain it at the end, when it's going to be something people will just have like, what the fuck is that? Might as well just said it when it disappeared. Like, okay, now we can carry on. You know, I get that they need to get the TARDIS out of the way, because it's like, why don't they just get everyone in the TARDIS and leave? But yeah,
because it's probably quite
very
hard.
Tacked on.
Yeah, it feels quite hard to get rid of the TARDIS, I imagine, this kind of episode. Because if you think you've had it, if you think of Voyage of the Damned, oh whoops, it's fallen out of that. It's fallen out of the spaceship because that's where it got. You think of 42, whoops, it's too hot in that room. You can't go get it.
Impossible Planet. Oh, that storage unit's fallen beneath the Earth.
So there's an element of, well, what can you do that's new? And although it's technically a Classic Who reference, I guess you're like, Classic Who Monster, let's just throw that in there. It's fine. But it is fine. I do get it,
but it is kind of a tacked on thing, especially when they make such a big deal of it, and Clara keeps asking what it was, and then it's just like, it's this thing. Like most people won't know what this is because we haven't mentioned it in 35 years. But it is what it is. But I was like, you could just said it at the time, mate.
Fair enough, I understand. But I like that they played it off that he was embarrassed about it, and that kind of maybe forms why he didn't want to mention it.
What a bad idea it was. Yeah.
God, yeah. yeah. So at least there's something in there, and it's not just a sort of, oh yeah, by the way, it was this. Let's go get it. It's more of a
Well,
but yeah, yes. My first negative is unfortunately the professor, David Warner's character. I just kind of was watching it, and I was like, you don't really need to be here. I don't think he necessarily adds too much to it. I think he does play a little bit into the end when Clara's like, "Oh, you saved him, so why not save us?" I think that's kind of the only payoff you get for his characters to be there.
Yeah.
But I think you could have replaced him with one of the other characters that was already there and had the same effect. Maybe Tobias's character, and sort of had him, a slightly different. I don't know, but
I think James Norton probably could have pulled that kind of character off.
Yes, yeah, 100%. So I don't think you necessarily need him there. I can appreciate that he's there, for a bit of levity, but you are getting that with Matt Smith anyway, with some of his moments. And I appreciate that he plays off with Clara kind of quite nicely. But again, you could probably get that with one of the other characters, but they probably didn't want to have someone as sort of similar age as Clara to sort of have that, try and then have to deal with that kind of romance maybe aspect of things. Having an older character kind of cuts that option off so that people don't speculate or whatever. So he's fine there, but I don't think he adds enough to the story for me to be like, yes, he's an essential character to the episode. But I appreciate he's there, and as with, like you said, I can live with it being there. It's something that I just needed to come up with, and of all the things in this episode, he was just one of the things that wasn't the best. If that makes sense. But that's nothing against his performance. I think he does a great job being in there, but just didn't need to be there. Your second negative.
This might be a very particular one. This might just be BBC iPlayer's copy of the episode. I haven't verified this. I think the music's way too loud when the Doctor and Clara first turn up. I couldn't hear what people were saying.
Yeah, it's all very loud because he's even shouting as well.
Yeah, I think the mixing just a bit. I genuinely didn't hear like 2 or 3 of those lines just completely like. It's like probably like thumpy BC music as well. I'm like, I don't know if that works anyway, but again, that might just be on BBC iPlayer because I don't remember ever having that problem with the episode before. And I would have watched this quite a few times over and over when it first aired. So maybe I'm getting old. Maybe that's what it is. It's too loud. It could be that, but then I imagine a lot more episodes would have that problem with me if it was just my age. But maybe this is just the start of my decline. Who can say? So that's a very particular one. It's not too much of a start on the episode, really. It might just be curse you BBC iPlayer. But it was a problem I had watching this episode in the way I did this certain time.
No, fair enough. That's fair. That's why I've resorted to putting subtitles on almost everything now. So it's probably not a good sign. But what can you do? That's age.
What's going on? Who's that?
I can't hear it. I can't hear my TV episode without reading what they're saying. I don't know what's going on. But yeah, that's fair enough. I did notice there was, I think, towards the end, the music seemed a bit like, I was like, oh, that music's coming very, very loud there. But because that made me think, I heard it and I was like, oh, there's music there. That's quite loud. I was like, I've not really heard the music this episode. So I think maybe they get it right most of the time. There might be a couple of moments like
it might be a bit of a mixing thing. Because apparently, I didn't notice this, but apparently the opening theme is a bar longer than any other episode as well.
Oh.
It goes woo at the end, an extra one longer than, and it never happens before and doesn't happen again. I didn't notice it.
That's to get it into the 41 minutes. They were like, look, it needs to be 41 minutes.
yeah, just add another bar of music at the start. No one will know.
Yeah. No one will notice. It's fine. Oh, but yeah, my second negative, and now we're really getting into the nitpicky stuff. It's very convenient that the Ice Warrior ship showed up right before he was about to blow everyone up. Oh, great. Okay.
They wanted the shot that was in the trailer of the finger getting near the button. Like, now.
Yes, especially because you'd have thought they'd have been like, oh, we're on our way. Don't do anything silly. But they don't.
The communication's flawed if they can't even be like.
Yeah, it can only go one way.
BRB, 5 minutes.
Yeah. Fine. They needed a convenient way to get out of it. Yes, this makes sense. And it's also a very convenient way to bring the submarine back to the surface. But it is exactly that. It's just convenient. But it's the only way you can see out of this episode, unless you're going to have them because it could have gone on indefinitely with Skaldak and the Doctor just looking at each other, being like, well, one of us is going to have to go first. Who's it going to be? Which is the whole metaphor for the Cold War anyway, and then something intervenes that stops it all.
Maybe we should kiss now.
Yeah. Well, it would certainly put one of them off at least,
Yeah, that's certainly fan fiction out there, I'm sure.
Oh God, yeah, could you imagine? But yeah, it's just convenience. But I can live with it. It's fine. It doesn't bother me too much. Your final negative?
Yeah. Speaking of CGI Skaldak face, I guess it might be a mix of the CG, but also just how it's framed when he's like above them before like the proper reveal. All I could think of was like, oh, he's in an Iron Man suit. That's all I could think of how that's framed, and it kind of took me out of it a bit. And I don't think maybe that his top jaw of teeth has never moved. I'm like, nah, maybe budget was tight. I understand, and I think it looks fine considering it's 10 years old. I think it looks a lot better than some others have. It's certainly not PNG Weeping Angels from Flesh and Stone.
Or PNG Capaldi screwdriver that I suddenly realised was a thing.
Yes, that's so funny.
It's a what? It's a PNG? I did not realise it was a PNG.
It's because it's like 0.2 seconds on screen.
Yeah, I was like, pardon? But looking at it, I'm like, oh my God, that's terrible.
Yeah. It's really fun because they hadn't finished the prop yet. It's like,
but fair enough. They went years without everyone.
They got away with it for like 10 years. So
they did get away with it. Good for them.
Fair enough. And again, it's only 0.2 seconds.
Yeah.
But you know how Doctor Who are, the Doctor Who fandom. But I just think there's something about the framing of it. I don't know how they'd have done it differently, which is why it's kind of like I can live with it. But it still just feels like maybe
you could have just had the eyes glowing in the darkness rather than having, like, the sort of shadowy face.
Maybe just some like the tips of his spindly fingers like gripping. I don't know. Just you don't really get the impression like. I don't know. He's actually up there when it's just a face like that. And I just love the image of him just being like this on the ceiling. Well, I would have loved to have seen that. But
and that kind of ties in with my sort of third negative / nitpick. They only show the head. They never show like his full form, which I think doesn't help that scene at all because you have no idea in your head what is going on there and sort of what it is.
And I do find it interesting that they did design the entire thing. Because there's an action figure of Skaldak out of the suit in those shitty cardboard play sets they did for like a month, and then everyone hated them. There's like a little plastic Skaldak in that, and it's like the full form. So they designed it and just didn't use it. So maybe it was a budget thing. I don't know.
It must be a budget thing. But yeah, I sort of because you see him kind of like run by, don't you? When Clara opens a little.
Whoa.
Yeah. So you kind of see that, and it gives you a slight impression there, but. Not having that sort of full form and having the really spindly fingers and then like this really blocky head, you can't putting them together. They don't feel like they should be the same thing.
Yeah.
So maybe that's an issue that just a fleeting glance of something would have worked, but budget, it's fine. It's not something that I needed, but it would have been nice to have seen.
Yeah. When if they tried it like, oh wow, it looks terrible. Just stick to the
head. Yeah, and I mean, because you could have it could be an alien situation, which probably would have been better, where you could have had this freakish head on this like tiny spindly body. But then maybe that they did that and they went, that's too much like Alien. It's too derivative. We're gonna get rid of it and we'll show his head. Don't know. Yeah. But it's fine. Have you got any other sort of additional negative points you want to hit on?
What else do I have? Anything? I guess again something I can live with because it's not even like a main negative or anything. And I get it's the point of the episode that he's out of the armor, but I just think the costume's so good. I'm sad we don't see more of him actually in it, just walking around just for a bit. I do think that's a shame. But again, that's kind of retroactively corrected because we have another Ice Warriors story in a couple of years where we see them properly. So it's one of those things. And I do kind of ultimately appreciate them doing something a bit different with the Ice Warriors.
Yeah. I think that's fair enough. My only sort of additional one might be that it's very nitpicky. When they rise to the surface and they all come out the top, they would freeze. They've just been soaking wet and they're now going into like freezing cold temperatures at the top of the North Pole. They would be frozen like
they would just die.
Because they would be. It's freezing. It would be freezing cold up there, and they've just been covered in water for the whole episode. They'd be soaked through. But
we did it, Clara. Clara. The woman thrice dead.
Oh god, and then he starts to disappear because oh no, whoa!
Oh my god, what's going on?
Yeah, and then the world does explode because it. But yeah, I think that's the only other thing but that's a silly thing which I'm like I can it's fine. I'm not fussed. They weren't out there for too long. It's fine. Cool. That's it then for our positives and negatives. But do you have some facts that are fun?
Well, I guess that's up to the people watching to decide, but I do have something that I've written.
It's the people's facts.
Yes, the people's Skaldak. Okie dokie. This episode marks the return of the Ice Warriors for the first time since
what?
the third Doctor. Can't believe we're doing this again. Look, they do good work on the Doctor Who wiki, all right? I wouldn't have known this otherwise.
Yeah. Okay.
This episode marks the return of the Ice Warriors for the first time since third Doctor story, The Monster of Peladon, in 1974, a 39-year gap, and the first time they've been seen out of their armour on television. It's also the first story featuring them not to be written by their creator, Brian Hales. Several aspects of Ice Warrior culture mentioned in this story were taken from lore established in comics featuring the Ice Warriors themselves, including the existence of powerful female Ice Warriors, Skaldak's rank as whatever Grand Marshal or something he is, and the implication that Ice Warriors have a feudal sense of honor. So that's nice. They kind of canonized kind of the extended lore, I guess, from the comics.
Cool.
That's fun.
Unacceptable.
Unacceptable. How dare they? This is the only episode of Series 7B with no mention of Clara's Impossible Girl story thread. And I must say, Clara really hits different in this episode. I was having a good time. Speaking of, Clara is the only female character in the story. The Power of Kroll in 1979 was the last time such an occurrence took place, where Romana was the only female character in that four-parter.
God, Doctor's so woke now. They can't have a whole episode with it's just like one woman. God.
Oh my god.
There's women everywhere.
Oh, they're powerful female Ice Warriors, are they?
God.
Oh. So it's interesting, and I guess historically accurate. God damn it, Doctor Who. But there you are. All the shots of the exterior of the submarine are a model made by the crew for the episode, placed in front of a blue screen. I'd have loved to have made that model. That'd have been fun. The TARDIS interior isn't seen at all in this episode, which is obviously quite a rare occurrence. Guest stars Liam Cunningham and Tobias Menzies both starred in HBO's Game of Thrones. The episode's writer Mark Gatiss also made several appearances in the show, and Matt Smith would later star in spin-off House of the Dragon. Smith and Menzies also both went on to play Prince Philip in Netflix's The Crown, which also stars Cold War guest stars Joss O'Connor as at the time it was set, Prince Charles. It's all connected.
God, it is. It really is all connected.
Cold War was the fourth most watched programme on BBC iPlayer in the month that it aired, which was April 2013. Stephen Moffat was uncertain about...
Well, number one? God.
Doctor Who's rubbish now. Cancelled it in the year of the 50th anniversary. Moffat was uncertain about bringing the Ice Warriors back, worried that they were what general audiences thought of as a rubbish Doctor Who monster who moved slowly and spoke in a way which meant you had no idea what they said. Gatiss, however, was a huge fan of them and had campaigned for years to bring them back. Under the pretense of calling about their show Sherlock, Gatiss pitched the submarine setting and the idea of the Ice Warrior getting out of its armour to Moffat, which proved to be enough to win him over. So well done, Mark. That's what bullying works.
Look, I can make him run, Stephen. Please, I can make him run.
Please. Fine. Gatiss described the episode as a love letter to the base Under Siege stories, extremely common and popular in the Patrick Troughton era. This episode makes reference to this by referring to the TARDIS's HAD system, which was last mentioned in the second Doctor story, The Crotons. The cast was sprayed with water in between every take on set.
Oh, that would be refreshing now, though, to be fair.
Yeah, I would love that now.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was cold when they filmed it, but my God, I'd love that now. Gatiss was insistent the Ice Warriors weren't redesigned too much, and Moffat agreed, as he felt the design wasn't recognisable enough to change too drastically anyway. Neil Gorton of Millennium FX said, "My problem with the old ones is that they had Lego hands, spindly arms but a bulky body, and fur sticking out. Everything which didn't suggest Ice Warriors to me. The costume in the episode Cold War was made of rubber rather than fiberglass like in the original stories to be more comfortable for performer Spencer Wilding, who had previously played the Minotaur in the God Complex and the Wooden King in The Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe. And he also plays the main Dreg in Orphan 55, but that's obviously to come.
Absolutely
good
iconic.
old Spencer Wilding.
Iconic monster, the Dreg.
Iconic. So there you go. Fun facts.
Lovely. Very nice stuff. Last thing to do for Cold War. Out of 10, what are you giving it?
7.5 from me.
An 8 from me.
Oh,
wow.
nice.
I think this is the highest. This is the first time in 7B that we've swapped, that I'm higher than you on these episodes.
Yeah.
I think I'll be lower than both. But yeah, I mean, I do think it's probably the best of 7B so far. Had a lot of fun with it. I think there were a lot of performances were good. The writing was good. I think everything was sort of top tier on this one. So it would be hard to sort of. And some people might be saying, "Well, why is it only an 8? It's not as good as other episodes."
8 out of 10.
Yeah,
it's not
as good
Boomtown.
as other.
That's why.
It's not Boomtown, and even that only got a 9.5.
You should be thanking me.
Yeah, right. But it's fine.
What got it to an 8?
Good,
what got it to an 8 in this at all is that Skaldak's hands are kind of
hands,
like.
Yeah, it confused me for a second. I was like, "Oh, Slovene!"
They're back.
And then, they got me. They got me with it.
You're in a fugue state for half an hour, missing
Yeah,
your episode.
didn't
Like,
watch
it must
the
have been
episode,
good. It
yeah,
flew by.
yeah. God, all I could think was Slovene. I'd gone off on a tangent on Wikipedia. But yes, that is it for Cold War. Next episode, Hyde is called Hyde, isn't it? It's just Hyde. I bet you've been waiting to do that all day, haven't you? All video.
No, I just thought of it there because I'm a comedy genius.
Yes, okay, sure. The episode title is called Hyde.
Yes.
And it's been a long time since I've seen this one. Because I remember sort of it not disliking it, but sort of thinking it was a bit slow, a bit meandering, and not that interesting to me. So I'm fully hoping to be turned around on this one and hoping that it's better than I remember it being. But what do you remember it being? How do you remember it?
I remember always enjoying it. I think I don't know how I feel about the love story element with like the other creature. I think it's fine, but yeah, it's definitely at its best. I think when it's like they lead into the ghost story aspect of it, which I really enjoy. Again, it's something that feels a bit different. They don't do like a proper ghost story all that often, so that's fun. I think the guest cast are really good. Douglas Scott's an amazing actor, so it's cool to see him. And we obviously have the woman who then plays Verity Lambert in Space and Time.
Yeah.
So
they must have been filming this at the same time, mustn't they? Sure.
Must have been similar times, yeah.
They must have.
Doctor Who served her well in
one
2013.
One of them probably saw the other one and went, "Actually, you'll be good for this." And then because it can't be a pure coincidence, sure.
Then Chris Chibnall watched it and like, that guy would be a good master. This guy playing Morris Hussein. Bring him in. Wait a minute. So yeah, I really like the kind of the haunted house aspect of it. There's a few like classic series references which I think are quite fun. Obviously the reasoning for the Doctor being there kind of ties into the overarching mystery, which I love anyway. I remember there's a bit with like the TARDIS being a bitch to Clara because it doesn't like her because of her whole impossible nature. So I'm looking forward to that. We get to see 11 in the orange spacesuit, the iconic orange spacesuit.
Yeah, gets to run out right before he dies.
Yeah. Oh. So
to be fair,
Jodie really did it.
Yeah. Cut it in. Get the real fine there.
So yeah, I am kind of excited to see that. We talked a bit about that earlier with the Doctor and Clara's opposing views on that situation. Yeah, I always remember really liking it. So I guess we'll see if that still rings true.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, yeah, it really has been a long time since I've seen it. Same with most of, I think I mentioned before, most of Series 7B, except for the series finale. I think I haven't really watched that much of, because I think in hindsight the series finale is kind of what overshadows the rest of the series. If people talk about Series 7B, it's always going to be about the finale. And
I suppose that's true of every series, really.
Yeah, there is an element of that, but I think with this being the 50th anniversary and that coming so soon after, and with what the finale does sort of to the lore anyway, I think it
I love that was like the biggest change in Doctor Who lore ever at the time, and now it's nothing.
Yeah, I know. Could you imagine? God. But I mean, at least that one is because it's set between Doctors. At least with like the Timeless Child, it's before, so there's like that cut off where you can ignore it if you want to. But this one was before, and it was all because the Christopher Eccleston didn't want to come back. They're like, oh God, what are we gonna do? God forbid we get Paul McGann back for a full length feature. God, let's get another one in. Let's do someone else.
They probably we saw Paul McGann at all because of that decision with the War Doctor, I suppose.
Yes, and you know what? I do really like the Paul McGann that we get because of the whole War Doctor thing. I love Night of the Doctor, but that's anyway. That's getting into a few weeks away now. We are getting pretty close to it though. There's only a handful of episodes left before we're hitting
5 episodes left until the 50th.
Before we're hitting that, so maybe we might have to do a special little mini review for Night of the Doctor. So I think it would be harsh to skip it because it's
I can imagine you would insist upon it.
I will insist upon it. Yes, this is confirmation now that we will do a mini review of Night of the Doctor.
I thought you might say that. It's on iPlayer, so why not?
And well, exactly. It's part of the series, and we'll have that.
I haven't seen that in years.
That one will be 10 out of 10.
That will be your 10 out of 10. Yeah. There's not enough time for it to go wrong.
No, yeah, exactly. There's nothing you can do wrong. There's literally nothing.
Everyone remembers where they were when they watched that when that dropped.
I
expecting it to be like, it's going to be John Hurt in the story.
Yeah. I was stood in my college cafeteria being like, oh, there's a new Doctor Who thing that's come on YouTube, and I watched it, and it went, Paul McGann's like, oh, that was like a big thing. I was like, oh my God, nobody cared. Nobody cared around me. Nobody gave a shit. And I was like, look, it's Paul McGann. It's Paul, nobody cared.
They would tease it before being like, one of the Doctors from the 50th is in it, because technically John Hurt's like reflections in it at the end.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so it's going to be one of the, who's it going to be? And then it's fucking Paul McGann, King.
And everyone absolutely screamed, lost their shit. But yes.
And I am looking forward to getting to that, considering we just watched the movie recently as well. And I haven't seen that in years. So that's got me quite excited to watch Night of the Doctor.
Top tier Paul McGann. Everything he's in is great. TV movie, Night of the Doctor, Power of the Doctor. All three, excellent stuff. No notes. But yes, that'll be it for this week. There could be some Doctor Who news between now and the next episode, maybe.
Maybe.
We'll see. If anything important comes up, I'm sure we'll cover it. But until then, we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.